Hey man, say man, it's your boy DAALIGHT man, Daylight TV, back at y'all with another one. And on this trip, we're gonna recap week 7 of America's first Frico conspiracy trial against Sean Diddy Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Brother Love, aka John Gotti of Baby Oil, aka the El Chapo of Astroglide, or as I've been calling him, Baby Oil Diddy. Baby Oil Diddy. That nigga. But first, man, hit that like and subscribe button, smash that notification bell if you really mobbing with the content. DAALIGHT TV. Let's get it. On Monday, June 23rd, 2025, in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Special Agent Joseph Cercello was cross-examined by the defense, providing more detail about the government's investigation, which focused on travel records, hotel invoices, and messages allegedly supporting the prosecution's claim about Frico. The prosecution had used messages from Christina Corman, KK, Diddy's former chief of staff, to show her alleged involvement in planning these sex marathons, right? And that kind of goes to what everybody's been asking, like, why wasn't she either indicted as a co-conspirator or called as a witness for the prosecution, or the defense for that matter, right? Naturally, I didn't think she was going to be called for the defense, and I'll get into that in a minute. Now, prosecutors are also focused on logistics and organization of these alleged freak-offs, highlighting Diddy and his employees' personal involvement in arranging and orchestrating these events. And naturally, they're going to focus on the travel arrangements and logistics because they're trying to prove sex trafficking. And as far as the employee that testified, we know why they weren't listed as co-conspirators or whatever, because they turned state's evidence, and damn near all of them testified under immunity. Pretty much all of these witnesses that were, actually linked to Bad Boy or Diddy, whatever, all testified under immunity or, under a pseudonym. So yeah, man, like this shit was super secretive. You know what I'm saying? An audio message from Diddy to an assistant mentioning no more baby oil was presented as evidence of planning behind these freak off encounters as well. So I don't know. I guess he was still messing with Daphne Jane, 50 baby mama, like up until he was arrested. So clearly he might have still been doing some things, you know what I mean? And, after the raid had happened and the stuff about the baby oil came out, I guess he was afraid about placing another large order. Like, imagine if somebody, like, after you watch the Diddy trial or something like that, and then, like you work for Johnson & Johnson's wholesale office, and you just watch this shit on CNN, and somebody called you and says, hey, I need a pallet of baby oil or whatever. You damn sure finna look at the phone like, did he? I would. I'd probably fuck around and lose my job too. But a message from Jane was also shown again, or further explained by Cercello to the defense, expressing feelings of being used and statements like, I don't want to be used or locked in a room to fulfill your fantasies. This was, I guess, to support the coercion and manipulation, right? Now, the defense, during their cross-examination of Agent Cercello, introduced text messages that they argued showed Jane enthusiastically participating in these sexual encounters with Diddy. The defense attempted to demonstrate Jane's willingness to participate in the freak-offs by presenting text messages suggesting that she gave consent and showed initiative in, setting up the freak-offs or hotel nights. Then they showed a message from Jane to an escort that read, "You're such a sweetheart. Thank you for making me feel beautiful." Text indicating Jane's enthusiasm about other sexual acts was shown as well. So I guess, they're just showing that while maybe she might have been frustrated or there were certain things about the freak offs or hotel night that she didn't like, there were things that she enjoyed about it as well, particularly living rent-free. On Tuesday, June 24, 2025, in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, Homeland Security Special Agent Joseph Cicchello continued his cross-examination. The defense focused on highlighting evidence that suggests Jane was a willing participant in the freak-off, such as text messages where she expressed enthusiasm for the encounters and arranged logistics like travel and lodging for the escort. Wondering if that was the same one she called a sweetheart. After Agent Cicchello's testimony, the prosecution formally rested his case, having presented evidence and testimony from over 30 witnesses over nearly 7 weeks. It had been 7 weeks because it was 7 weeks of testimony and 8 weeks of trial altogether. This is gonna kind of be like week 9, I guess, for the jury deliberating, however long that takes. Diddy's defense team then presented their case in less than 30 minutes, primarily by reading selected text messages between Diddy and Cassie into the record. They did not call any witnesses whatsoever. You know what I mean? And during the court proceeding, Diddy himself confirmed to the judge that it was his decision not to testify as well. Now, a lot of things have been speculated about why they haven't called any witnesses and all of that, right? And I've seen a couple of legal experts speak to this, and it was kind of what I thought too. So, just like how the prosecution called all their witnesses and the defense had an opportunity to take them apart on the stand, if the defense called any witnesses, the prosecution would have the same, right. So now, if you put somebody in there that's a Diddy supporter, and let's just say they got some freak off, shady, thing going on in their background too, now you can start discrediting that witness or whatever, and then it's like look like a liar. So now it's just you look like a liar, a dirty, like sexual deviant, just like the guy that's on trial. So you might just be lying to cover it up and protect yourself as well. You know what I mean? So rather give themselves that type of exposure, it's like this. Everybody that the prosecution presented as a witness was involved in this shit, outside of the law enforcement who were investigating and called the summary witnesses and so on and so forth. So right now, it just looked like the prosecution had called a bunch of liars to the stand, and they're just trying to separate themselves. Because you heard Jonathan Perez say he only stopped working for Diddy because he didn't want to become legally entangled. And everybody else was ever testifying under immunity and shit like that. So that's that, right? The defense filed a Rule 29 motion for a judgment of acquittal, arguing that the prosecution had failed to meet its burden of proof to convict Diddy. And this is pretty much a standard procedure in criminal trials. And the judge pretty much reserved a decision on the motion. You know what I mean? But I guess it's not going to be an acquittal. At the time of this video, is being, at the time that this video is being recorded, it's Monday, June 30th. So today is the day that the judge is set to give the jury its instructions before they go into deliberation. You know what I mean? So unless something like drastic happens today and I gotta cut back in and give y'all a special report, update, whatever, you know, we're going to deliberation. The prosecutors announced that they were withdrawing some of their previous allegations, including the attempted kidnapping and arson charges related to Kid Cudi. I believe that's where the kidnapping was, the Capricorn Clark situation, because they were saying like she didn't want to go. The Kid Cudi's house with Diddy to do all that shit, open up the presents and everything, and the arson charge. And this move was intended to streamline the jury instructions and simplify the charges for the jury. Yeah, because sometimes like they'll charge you based on like the bare minimum. So it's like technically you're just meeting like the guidelines of what qualifies, you know, to indict on that charge, right? Yeah, so like they pretty much want to simplify the charges, I guess, and the complexity of it, because they don't want the jury to get back there and then be like, damn, this is a reach, and then start looking at everything else like it's a potential reach as well, and then come back with a not guilty verdict, you know. So yeah, like now they trying to dumb it down, you know what I mean? Like, which kind of almost feeds into the narrative that, you know, they exaggerated the charges, don't it? Maybe it's just me. On Wednesday, June 25th, in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, the focus was primarily on determining the final jury instructions before deliberations were to begin. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, and the judge met to finalize the instructions that they would receive, outlining the legal framework for their deliberation. And like I already told y'all, like the U.S. attorney indicated that they would streamline the instructions by dropping some of their like racketeering theories related to the attempted arson, the kidnapping, and all that. Now, that doesn't mean that Diddy is entirely cleared of these allegations, but that they're not going to specifically be presented to the jury as like separate charges for them to consider, you know. Lawyers debated how to instruct the jury on the concept of sex trafficking, particularly whether a commercial sex act needed to be completed for the charge to apply. Prosecutors argued that sex trafficking could occur even without the completed commercial sex act, citing the incident where Combs allegedly threw Cassie to the ground and dragged her during a Frico, right? The defense argued that this instruction would be severely prejudiced because, yeah, now you want to like move the goalposts. You're already dropping or trying to simplify the charge by dropping the attempted kidnapping and the arson, which you didn't really have much evidence or whatever. Even Kid Cudi wasn't completely sure if, you know, he couldn't say under oath or like for sure that Diddy did that, right? Now you wanna say sex trafficking or whatever, like the commercial sex act, engaging with a prostitute, all these things, right? And now you want to say that even though a sex act might not have been completed or a paid for sex act wasn't completed, let's still try to charge it as sex trafficking. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, bro, because then now with that, if that's the instruction, right? Jury what if they really get back there and they just feel like this whole thing is a reach? Because now y'all dumbing down too much. Y'all was super gung-ho before anything. I'm just thinking of what the jury might think back there, but I could be wrong. You know what I mean? The judge indicated that he was leaning toward the prosecution's view on sex trafficking, or on the sex trafficking definition, but would consider the matter, further. The defense requested and the judge granted an extra night before presenting their closing arguments, pushing it to Friday, June 27th. This was met with concern from the prosecution about potential gamesmanship. Now, when lawyers start showing concern or expressing concern about gamesmanship, it refers to the aggressive and strategic use of rules or laws that, while they might be within the confines of the law or rules of engagement within the courtroom, they may violate certain ethical principles, or common courtesy, even undermine the fairness and efficiency of like the whole legal process. Right? So it's just really about using like the rules in order to gain, for your client. Now, on Thursday, June 26, 2025, the prosecution in the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial delivered their closing argument. Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic presented the government's case outlining charges against Diddy, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Slavic argued that Combs was the head of a criminal enterprise who used power, violence, and fear to get what he wanted. The prosecution highlighted how Combs allegedly forced women like Cassie and Jane into grueling, days-long sexual encounters against their will. Slavic even connected events described in testimony, including drug-fueled sex marathons, to sex trafficking charges. The prosecution accused Diddy of tampering with witnesses, including attempts to pressure accusers like Jane and Mia to lie or provide false information. Slavic contended that Diddy's employees and security staff enabled and concealed his alleged crime. Yeah, and they all testified for you and, became state's witness and shit. That's why he in this shit by himself. Slavic's closing argument emphasized that proving even one instance of coercion for sex trafficking was sufficient for a conviction. She also argued that evidence of drug distribution alone could be enough to convict Diddy on racketeering charges. The prosecution also urged the jury to hold Combs accountable, arguing that he had evaded responsibility for his actions for too long due to his money, his power, and influence. So that's the prosecution's case, right? And again, in the beginning, it was kind of like ups and downs. You had moments of feeling like, damn, the prosecution's really proving their case. And then it's like, not really. And now that we get the closing arguments and they're like wrapping it all up, it does start to feel more like a reach. And I'm wondering if the jury is sensing that. So, yeah, she's pretty much just letting them know, like, look, even if you don't believe all of these, allegations or all of the witnesses, even if you just believe one story, that's enough for a conviction. You understand what I'm saying? Which kind of adds to my feelings about how, like, the more it goes on, the more it feels like it's a reach. Like there's just so many factors to like consider. Jonathan Perez said he only left because he wanted to avoid legal entanglement. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he feels like what was happening was wrong or illegal. It's just he doesn't want to get caught up either way. he's not up for the fight because he ain't got Diddy money to fight this shit. And the fact that nobody wants to go to trial with Diddy after the Shine situation is not hard to believe either. You know what I'm saying? On Friday, June 27, 2025, the defense team for Sean Diddy Combs presented their closing arguments in his federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial. Led by attorney Mark Agrippolo, the defense team aimed to cast doubt on the prosecution's claims, arguing that the government had exaggerated the case against Diddy. The defense attempted to portray Diddy's actions as a swinger's lifestyle and personal drug use rather than criminal enterprise. Almost inclined to agree. Agrippolo focused on the credibility of key prosecution witnesses, including Cassie Ventura and Jane Daphne, suggesting that they were motivated by financial gain or had exaggerated their accounts of what happened during their relationship with Diddy. The defense contended that all sexual encounters were consensual and not the result of coercion or sex trafficking, which they argued was the key element of the government's case. Agrippolo attempted to minimize the significance of evidence presented by the prosecution, such as the infamous hotel security video of Diddy assaulting Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel, claiming that the argument was over a phone and not Cassie refusing to participate in the Frico. Now, following the defense's closing arguments, prosecutor Maureen Comey, Jane Comey's daughter, presented the government's rebuttal, refuting the defense claims and reiterating the prosecution's case. So basically saying like, yo, all that stuff you trying to tell y'all about how we improve our case and we're just pumping it up, you know, making a mountain out of a molehill, that ain't it. You know what I mean? Like, the diddler did it. Yeah, but the judge in the case, Judge Arun Subramanian, I want to say I said that right too, Subramanian. Every time I watch something different, I hear something different. Decided that the jury would receive their instructions on Monday, June 30th, before beginning their deliberations. And yeah, at the time of this video, like I said, it's Monday, June 30th. So we'll find out what the instructions are, and the jury is going to deliberate for however long that takes, and we'll find out if Diddy did it. I don't know if the question is whether or not that Diddy did it. Is it RICO? Is it sex trafficking? Like, he definitely did the freaky shit. Like, this is his life. Like, you know what I mean? This is what he does. But does it really all come together or whatever and constitute charging him with a RICO? The same shit that they go after the mafia and, you know, all of these, the Treyway. Like, I mean, I could just name, like, all right, should Diddy be looking at the same time that Big U is facing right now? That is like, you know what I mean, the picture or whatever, based on what we heard from 30 witnesses, bro. You know, what I also think is interesting about this is, like, it's always been the Rainbow Mafia allegations with Diddy. And throughout all of this testimony, right, we have not heard not one allegation of Diddy being sexually, like, involved with a guy outside of, like, being a cuck and liking to watch. You know what I'm saying? Him actually, like, touching dudes or having dudes touch him never came up, bro. That's kind of interesting or whatever, you know, and it just makes you wonder, Or maybe that was what all of the allegations or whatever, or the speculations about Diddy's sexuality, came from. Is the fact that he actually liked to watch other men, and then like to put the emphasis on how endowed he wants them to be. But yeah, man, it's been a long 7 weeks. A lot of research, a lot of pulling information, pulling video and, the courtroom sketches and all of that, putting it all together for y'all. And now it's finally over, bro. It's in the jury's hands. And who knows how long that might take or where it might lead to. Will they be gridlocked? Will it be easy for them? Is he guilty or not guilty? But that's this week recap of the Diddy trial, week 7. Potentially the end of it until, the jury comes back. So yeah, man, jump in the comments. Let me know what y'all think about all of this or whatever. If you're still here and if you've been watching every video that I've been dropping week in, week out of this or whatever, I appreciate y'all. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, smash that notification bell if you're really mobbing with the content. And as always, stay dangerous so you can be safe, especially if it's a nigga like Diddy standing behind it. It's your boy DAALIGHT TV. I'm out.